see. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Global Conversations in Doctoral Preparation web seminar. Tonight, our presenter is Dr. Raúl Mora, and he'll be presenting on Dissertating Across the Miles, Survival Skills for International Students and Their Families. Dr. Mora has successfully completed his doctoral journey from the University of Illinois, and he is currently an assistant professor at Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, Colombia. We really appreciate that he will be sharing his insights with us tonight. I'm one of the moderators tonight, Rashida Labas doctoral students in third year at Language, Literacy, and Technology, Washington State University. Also, I would like to introduce Dr. Peggy Abbas, professor at Language and Literacy. She is the founder of Conversations in Doctoral Preparation and Global Conversations in Literacy Research. These are web seminars that are really designed by doctoral students and for doctoral students. However, tonight we have a professor who finished his journey, and he will be sharing his insights with us. So I think that many of you are familiar with the Blackboard Collaborate tool. Feel free to chat and ask questions to Dr. Mora in the chat area. Feel free to chat and ask questions to Dr. Mora in the chat area. We will collect those questions, or you can just raise your hand here like this. We will call upon you and you ask Dr. Mora questions just by speaking into the microphone or computer here. So tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mora, who will be speaking and presenting on. Okay, Dr. Mora?
Yes.
Okay.
So should I just get this show on the road?
Yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Albers and her team, Global Conversations Doctoral Preparation, for accepting my proposal to speak with all of you tonight. It's a pleasure, and I greet you all from Medellin, Colombia, my hometown, the place that I'm currently doing my work. And I cannot stress enough how exciting this is that you have this seminar. So I can tell you, I wish somebody had started this maybe 10 years ago when I was studying my doctorate. That would have been wonderful. But I think right now it's a great thing that you have this, and I encourage you to continue with this particular event. My topic for tonight, I titled it Dissertating Across the Miles, Survival Skills for International Students and Their Families. This is possible thanks to the collaboration of Global Conversation Doctoral Preparation, and my home university through the Master of Arts in Learning and Teaching Process in Second Languages and the Literacy in Second Languages project. So if you're here, it means that you're doing a PhD, you're about to finish, or you're thinking about it, or some of you may be finished. Regardless, congratulations. If you're thinking of doing it, congratulations. If you're halfway through, congratulations. If you're getting ready to defend, congratulations. Doing a doctorate, it's an amazing challenge on every level, intellectual, personal, emotional. And it's a great chance to meet beautiful people from around the world. That said, pursuing a doctorate is not easy. It's difficult, especially when you embark on the journey of grabbing your passport and going to another country. You have to leave your family behind. You have to leave your friends behind. Some people have to leave their lovers behind, and by leaving behind, I mean leave them at home or breaking up. It goes both ways. And you have all these worries about the things that happen in your country, your family, the news. So there's a lot of pressure. You have the pressure that you have to graduate. And then you have to deal with the I-20 or DS 2019 paperwork to make sure your visa doesn't expire so you don't get deported. There is, of course, English. For some people, food, the culture are factors that add anxiety and add pressure. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the PhD is a challenge, but it's not impossible. It's not an impossible challenge. You will have to figure out a lot of things. And the first thing I want you to realize is that it's just fine to feel clueless sometimes, to feel lost sometimes. It's a normal thing. Sometimes doctoral students don't want to show that they have insecurities or questions or they have no idea where to go, but it's perfectly fine. All of us who graduated, we were there at some point in our lives. And just remember, I want to give you some advice from my perspective, my experience, from my life experience, that I hope can lead to a nice celebration like the one I show in the picture. That this was when I defended my dissertation on April 7, 2010. And the celebratory shots that followed. Just trust me, I'm a doctor. Now, a little bit about me before I start this. So I finished my PhD in 2010 at the Department of Curriculum Instruction, Division of Language and Literacy at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Right now, I'm an assistant professor, as Rashida pointed out, at Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana. That's a small Catholic university in my hometown. I coordinate the master's program I mentioned. I also serve in the design committee for our doctorate in education. I serve as assistant professor in some universities. Right now I have a nice, healthy group of master students whom I advise, and I'm got 2 doctoral committees, and I have a doctoral advisee here in Colombia. And I also had the chance to work with a lot of international students when I was at the university. I worked the International Student Scholar Services Office as the resource person during the check-in period. So I know very well the things that international students go through. What will I talk about tonight? First, I'll talk about the role of family here. So the first bunch of slides will zero in on the family. Both the family you take with you and the family you leave behind. And how to help them in the particular stage of the dissertation through this whole journey. Then I'll go into more technical matters that are important for doctoral students, like how to deal with fieldwork in research, how to deal with writing, how to navigate those questions that people will not stop asking you during the time you're dissertating, how to deal with isolation, and that's very important, and then how to get ready for defense. I mean, you want to be able to defend and then graduate. So that's where we go. So let's fasten our seatbelts and let's get this presentation really started. One thing I found, and this is from my own personal experience, and I had a chance to meet many grad students when I was in Illinois. Many were actually first-generation doctoral students. And it's very common today, still today. In many, especially in some parts like Latin America, I can imagine many parts of Africa and some parts of Asia, it may not be unlikely that you are the first person who goes into a doctoral program. So that's a lot of uncharted territory for everybody. We don't know what anything looks like, and you realize that there are a lot of questions in your family. Like, why are you going to do a doctorate? That's the first question sometimes they ask you. Why do this? And is it really worth it? Is it worth going to those places up north where there's a lot of snow and the weather is insanely cold, to deal with the winter, to deal with bad food, to deal with everything when you have it so cozy at home? And so that's the family. Sometimes they're proud of you, even if they don't know what you're doing, and they might not know what you're doing. But they need to know how to help you. And one thing I learned, because for my parents, this was a learning experience, as I said in the slide, sometimes what doctoral students need from mom and dad is to be mom and dad. Sometimes we just need our parents to be our parents, to be that comforting support structure that we've known since childhood. And that's just fine. There's so much, all the other stuff that has to do with the dissertation. That's why the university gives an advisor. And we'll get to that later. But sometimes you just need mom and dad to be there for you and just be supportive, be nice, be kind to you. There is a point there about your family being religious and spiritual, and I say don't underestimate the power of your prayers. And I say this because this was an actual conversation I had with my mom when I was dissertating. So my mom, we were having a phone call, and she's expressing her worries because I have all the stress, and she asks, "Son, what can I do for you? How can I help?" My response was very simple. Mom, just keep praying. Mom, pray. To whoever you pray, keep praying for God and for the angels and for everybody between to give me strength to endure this. Anything else, I'll just handle it with my committee. But pray. And it's important because, even if you tell them to just cheer and support, it gets them involved. Get them involved. But be patient. Be patient because they're going to ask you the question, one of the three questions. So what's your dissertation about? And of course, you're sometimes having trouble trying to study in English. To try to translate it into your home language, that's always a difficulty. But be kind to them. And summarize it in the easiest way you can. Half the people you're going to meet, you're going to have to do that anyway. And my advice to the parents and brothers and sisters and everybody in between, be patient with doctoral students. Sometimes if we don't tell you much, it's not because we're trying to be pretentious or we're trying to be conceited or because we just think we're better than everybody else in between. No, it's because sometimes we have no idea what we're doing. And we're trying to make sense of everything as we go. And as we go, we really are trying to make sense of it, so we cannot tell you what's going on until we know what's going on. But always remember this, to all the moms, dads in the audience, if your son or your daughter are doing that, it's because of you. It's because of what you did for them, what you did for us. So you deserve part of the credit. And yes, I read a comment by Eliza. Yes, I agree with you. This advice goes across the board. We just kind of zeroed in on the population of international students, but I agree. This applies to doctoral students, period. That there are some things that are more akin to international students because of the language issues, but some of the matters I'm mentioning here are across the board. And yes, you mentioned significant others. That's where we're going at right now. When I say your family, helping them cope with the dissertation, now I'm talking to the family, husbands, wives, children. That's what I'm talking to right now. And the dissertation, it's very stressful for them too. I mean, it's very stressful for the doctoral student, that goes without saying, but we sometimes forget how stressful it is for them, and the tensions that appear during the dissertation stage, and the frustrations. And this also applies to, for example, master students. So this is not just for dissertators. Some of these things apply to master students. As I said, in Colombia, I have to deal with that with my own master students and how to help them navigate these issues with the family. So I say the common question I wrote here, the classical question of why can't mommy or daddy play with me today? Why is mommy all the time in front of the computer? Why is daddy in front of the computer? Those are difficult things to handle. And even if you're single, and if you have a partner, sometimes you're blessed and your partner knows what you're going through, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes your partner is going with you. Sometimes your partner wants to do that later and is trying to figure out the whole experience from your perspective, trying to do it vicariously. So there are all these things going on. And the one thing I want, and I say this in a very strong eye because, as I said, I have to advise students, and I want for you and for all of you in the audience, is we want your family to be there when you get hooded. We want your wife or your husband or your children to be there, whether on the stands looking at children from the teachers or in front, who be depending on the university regulations. But we want them to be there. And we do not want, by any means, for the dissertation to be a breaker, to be a family breaker. There is a lot of evidence that sometimes those things happen. Marriages break, families break, families get strained, get completely strained because of this, and that's not what we want. We don't want that. One thing, and I'm gonna link this to the question that Tuba posted on the chat, finding the balance. And I'll answer the question with a quote that a professor of mine, Dr. Yuri Bauer, told me once when I was having a conversation with her. And he said, well, Raúl, remember, the week cannot last 7 days. That's the first lesson tonight. The week cannot last 7 days. Organize your schedule, but always make room for the family. You have the data to analyze, you have the right to, yes. But sometimes sacrificing one day, and I mean sacrificing is a horrible word here. Sometimes just devoting one day to the family. A day where you forget about everything else and you spend it with the family or your significant other or even yourself can reap benefits down the road. Always take time off. Always organize your schedule, and no matter how heavy it is, to give yourself nights off and give yourself a day off. Because you need that. You need to recharge. You need to reboot yourself. But I think this also, the whole dealing with the family poses a challenge for schools. And I think for those of us who are professors, our challenge is also to advocate for our students. Oh, and let me reply quickly to Rashida's comment about the guilt. Let go of it. Because feeling guilty is not going to take you anywhere, and it's actually going to distract you from being the loving family member you truly are and the great scholar that you are. Just let go of the guilt and organize your schedule. And here's a word to the schools. Families need support. I mean, there are lots of workshops for dissertators, there are lots of workshops for grad students, but we need workshops for families. We cannot leave the families alone. And we cannot let the dissertator be the only source of moral support for the family. So I think we have to really get more involved. And again, I do it from the perspective of someone who's a program coordinator who's trying to navigate this as my students are going through their own thesis research stages. We need to find stronger networks and stronger structures to support the families. Now, let me switch gears a little bit and begin to talk about some of the more practical matters that affect the grad students, and affect doctoral students in dissertation. Fieldwork, and you can imagine the majority of people here are in the social sciences or in the humanities or in the area of working with human subjects, going into the more technical IRB terminology. Fieldwork is very interesting. I love doing fieldwork, and I loved it when I was doing my dissertation, but it's difficult sometimes. And it's not difficult because of building the instruments or validating or, it's actually the action of talking to people that's difficult. Because you're going to find very nice stories in the field, but some of you are going to find very depressing and frustrating stories in the field. And you hear your participants telling you these stories, and you have to remain for the whole interview with your poker face. Because that's what they taught. That's what they taught us in the research methods classes. In the interview, poker face. Don't lead the interviewee one way or the other. Let them tell the story. Yes, but then probably the interview is over, and then you're walking home with all this information and this emotional load. That, oh yes, Shelby, you're absolutely right. Poker face is necessary. The defense will get to that at the end. And how do we balance this emotional investment? Because you are emotionally invested in your data. You're putting it together. You're collecting it. You're doing all the work. How can you let this not get the best of you? And I think the first thing that's important, and I think that some of the faculty who are in attendance are going to decide with me, is the importance of communicating with your advisor. You need to have a lot of communication with your advisor. Keep them in the loop. Don't keep them in the loop at all times. And talk to people in the know. Talk to your professors, talk to recent graduates, talk to the survivors. And when I started my dissertation, I said, well, I'm just gonna trust my advisors. I have two, and I'm gonna trust both of them wholeheartedly. I'm just gonna blindfoldly trust them. And my rationale was simple. It goes into a phrase I always tell my students. I tell my students that I can teach my dad everything except how to make a child. That's what I tell my students. I mean, I can teach my dad everything in the world except how to make a child. So in that sense, if my advisor already finished her doctorate and she has graduated people, she probably knows things I don't. And with that in mind, I said, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen because they graduated and they've seen other people graduate and they're doing well. So they might know something I don't. And they might have tricks up their sleeve that I don't. And just remember, I instituted a rule for my students, and I paraphrase it here as rule number 4. Don't panic. Doctoral students or grad students in general tend to panic a lot for everything. I panicked. I freaked out so many times I can't even remember. Until I realized that every time I was freaking out and I went to talk to my advisor and I said, I feel like this, and that, is that normal? It happened, I mean, those of you in attendance can relate to this. How many times you went to your advisor and said, I'm worried about this, and that, is that normal? And I remember one of my first advisor said something along the lines of, Raúl, that's perfectly fine. What's weird would be the opposite. What would not be normal would be if you weren't feeling like this, if you're not doing this, if you don't have these feelings. So some of the things that you're worried about are things that maybe are not just, it's not you. It's just the nature of the beast. And sometimes it's helpful to know that if you're feeling weird or you're feeling worried, it's just that's part of the process. It's part of a process of learning. And it's part of a process of becoming. Writing. What can we say about writing, aside from the fact that this gets the cat out of the bag? It's not easy. Writing is never easy. Especially when you're doing writing at the doctoral level and with the demands there. First thing that's important, and this is something I learned from my professors, is you have to turn writing at this level into a job. And you need to organize office hours for your writing. Just like you hold office hours as a TA, or you would go to class at a certain hour. So always organize your schedule. And just as if you, let's say if during the when you were a student, you know you had class from 2 to 5 on Mondays, you would go to 2 to 5 on Mondays. Go to write on 2 to 5 on Mondays. Organize your schedule around your different events. And have a fixed schedule. And yes, baby, coffee. Coffee is essential. It's the fuel that keeps us together, even when giving a webinar. And where you write is just as important as what you write. You need to find a place. The thing with writing, and I learned this over the years, is that you have to create the conditions. It doesn't flow naturally. You have to create the conditions for fun to flow. You have to create, just like we did here in office, a cozy place to write. The TA office for some people seems to work. And in the US, coffee shops are a place where a lot of magic can happen. This picture belongs to Cafe Coffee, my favorite coffee spot in Champaign, Illinois, in a place I've been trying to find for 4 years in Colombia and I haven't found anything like it. Sorry for the shameless plugging. But find a place where, yes, where the magic can flow. You have to create the magic. It doesn't come up by itself. And most of the international students and those who are into language arts, do you remember those rules of writing that we learned in ESL classes? Brainstorming, outlining, drafting, reverse outlining, revising, and editing. Please do not forget those rules when you're writing dissertation. They're going to come in very handy. That is not just for basic writing. That's for every kind of writing. Any kind of writing needs these rules. And the closer you follow them, the more organized your writing is going to flow as you're structuring your proposals into chapters. One thing that I found useful as I was trying to figure out my style was to actually go back to the lit review and look at the style that they used. Especially because if you lit review, you're looking at works in your field, and I think the majority of us are in literacy. So you look at all the specialized journals, and there seems to be a particular tone and style that identifies literacy writing. And imitate the style. I mean, don't plagiarize, but follow the style of the writers you review. And I know there are some here who are people who read often, and I like to see how they write. I even follow to some extent that when I started reading, I remember my advisor would send us drafts of her work to see how she did it, and I would use that as inspiration to figure out my own style. Style and voice are two different things. Style is what basically you're going to find in the majority of journals. Voice is the way you're going to say it within those rules, within those norms. And one important consideration of academic writing is its formulaic nature. It's very formulaic, but it's not that difficult to crack the code. And usually the review helps you crack that code. So when you're writing those reviews, also look at how they organize everything. And that'll help you make more sense of academic writing. And here I want to stop 1 minute and talk to my fellow second language speakers of English, to my compadres around the world. And please remember this when you are in grad school. When you're doing your doctorate, when you're doing your PhDs, English is not your second language anymore. It's your first language. And I'm using first language here in the way that School of Canada defines first language as the language you use most often in a particular context, which is not the same as your mother tongue. Your mother tongue will be whichever you speak, but your first language, well, you're there is English. It's not your second language, your first. And I say this because sometimes international students, they sell their competence short, and they think that English is not as good as they think it is. And sometimes I hear students in classes apologizing for their accents or apologizing for their English, and that's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. So your competence in English is good. It's so good you got accepted to begin the doctorate. It's so good that you managed to pass the clause. It's so good that you presented your proposal, your prospectus, your prelim, and you are now a candidate, and it's good enough to write the dissertation defending graduate. So if you can do all those things with English, I mean, give yourself a nice pat on the back and move on. And as you continue, your English is going to improve regardless, because you're doing all this work. And remember one important thing. Some of the things you're dealing with in putting together your dissertation are not just because you're an international student or because English is your second language. It's because you're doing a doctorate. Everybody struggles with things such as this. As I point out the meme with Boromir, the one does not simply, I like to say, one does not simply write a good research question with the first draft. I've never met any doctoral student who can ace the research question on the first draft. We all struggle with the research question. We all struggle with the problem, and that goes beyond our competence in the language. It goes beyond, because it has everything to do with the nature of how you conceptualize research at the doctoral level. And then there's, of course, writer's block. And we've all faced it. And you may face it. So be ready. The first thing that's important when you have writer's block is to look at what's behind it. Sometimes we think it's a dissertation, but it could be something bigger. It could be something personal. It could be something emotional. That is just reflecting. It's just popping up on your dissertation. But it might not be the dissertation alone. So begin to look at what's behind it. Most universities I know, at least in the United States, they have writing centers, or centers for writing studies, or writers' workshop. They have different names. And sometimes doctoral students don't seem to utilize that resource. My suggestion is go and talk to them. They might be able to find useful advice. And seek help if the problem is bigger than just writing. The variable 10, I'll tell you what that is. The variable 10 is something I learned when I had to go to therapy when I was doing my dissertation. Not because of the dissertation, I had some emotional problems that got me into that road, and I am not afraid to say it tonight in this webinar. And the therapist I was seeing, he told me there is this thing called the variable 10. And he said I should try that approach when I was feeling guilty or when I was having trouble. He said, here's what you do. You work on your dissertation stuff for 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. If you can, if you don't want to go beyond, then well, within 10 minutes you can go and move on. If you feel motivated, then you do another 10. And then at 10 minutes you assess again. If you feel with more energy, you do another 10, and so on and so forth until you feel you have completed enough 10 minutes that you want to stop. And one thing I learned is that the variable 10 usually became the variable 60, the variable 120, the variable 180. And because that's a way to keep yourself going, because as one of them was pointing out, and the answer is yes, you can have one. You can. We'll make sure to post it right somewhere so you can see it. One thing I learned was that way it lessens guilt, because sometimes you feel guilty because I haven't done anything today. I haven't done enough. I haven't done much. No. As long as you're doing something and it keeps moving forward, that will help you lessen the guilt. The guilt sometimes comes from not doing anything. But sometimes just doing something gets things moving forward. And it saves you from the shame that becomes associated with not getting all the writing done. Just to make a little break into something lighter, I just wanted to show that cartoon from Ph.D. Comics. I think most of you are familiar with that particular cartoon. And this is a true story. I think there are some questions that, once you're in the thick of it, become difficult to answer because you don't know how to explain them. And I always tell people, there are 3 questions you ask facilitators, unless you are in the position to give support, give advice, give a hug, and really help. And this question is uncomfortable because you don't know how to answer them. Question number 1. So, what's your dissertation about? And you're trying to figure that out yourself, and how do you explain that this is a study on literacy practices, and you don't even know, so it's uncomfortable. You try to figure that out, so it's horrible when people ask you that question. Question number 2, how's your writing going? Like, people think that writing is something that happens automatically. Like, no. And it's difficult. And of course, the one question says, yeah, so when are you graduating? And well, we don't know until we have a defense date. So, yeah, people just wait till they make an announcement, and then you ask them when they're graduating. Now, after that little more lighthearted thing, I want to get into a really serious matter here, is isolation. And isolation is something that happens to all of us, or has happened at some point to all of us. And while it holds true that you have to write a dissertation alone, as a single author, you don't have to do this all by yourself and without anybody else's help. Be careful with that. I know this firsthand, and as I said, I'm not afraid to say it, that I've lived this firsthand. I lived something I like to call, for the purpose of this, the PQID, like the post-quals isolation disorder. Some of you might call it prelim quals. The quality exam that you take before you present your proposal. I don't know if we call it quals. Some of you might call it the prelims. That's beyond the point. What's within the point is that something happens to you. So what is the PQID? That basically you have been taking classes all this time. Then you get into this groove. And then you take the quals, no more classes, you're on your own. And then you feel this void because now you don't have any friends, you don't have anyone to talk to, you're all on your own, no more community, and that's dangerous, because that shift can get a lot of people depressed, can get a lot of people in a bad funk. And my first advice would be there, if you're feeling that isolation is getting the best of you, seek therapy, seek counsel. That does help. It helps a lot. Most universities have counseling centers with people who are experts in helping people like us navigate this. Therapy, I'm going to point it out, since I'm being very forthcoming about this, I really don't talk about this, but I had to go to therapy before, in the middle of my doctoral program, because I had some emotional problems and I broke my leg, and well, let's be honest. But therapy doesn't make you weak. It does make you stronger. So seek it if you need it. Don't be afraid of what other people may think. If you need help, go ask for it. Seek it. Get it. Some of you may even have within your insurance at the university access to certain number of sessions. So check that and use it. Use those resources. Make sure you have as an emotional and spiritual advice network. If you're someone who's a spiritual person, someone who's religious in nature, the good thing about universities abroad is that you have churches for almost every denomination. Find the nearest church. Befriend someone, a priest, rabbi, whatever the name of the person is in your denomination. In my case, it's a priest because I'm Catholic. And get to know these people and find emotional support. Because some of the problems you have that lead to isolation, as I said, are not the writing. Could be homesickness. Could be you're having an emotional problem with your family, or your family at home is going through some sort of struggle. And those struggles reflect on the dissertation. So don't try to figure this out on your own. Same goes with creating study groups. Study groups are important, and I really encourage professors who to do this and enforce this and encourage it and create it with your students. Help build academic community. Check if your professor hosting. For me, one of the best things that happened was when we can work as a community, and I came as a student to a study group when I was about to start doing my fieldwork. And it's important to have that sense of community. I think collaborative work, and I'm going to answer quickly to Tuba's question, the sense of collaboration is important in the sense that you don't feel completely alone, and that you don't feel that the problems you're facing are just unique to you. The only thing unique to you is the topic of your dissertation. Everything else, you might realize how common it is across the board. Your topic is yours, but the experiences and the process of writing is something that happens to everyone. And sometimes, as I say here, sometimes commiserating can help. Sometimes just commiserating can help. I think for me that's the ultimate safety blanket. And the two ladies in the picture, two friends of mine, we used to go to the same coffee shop together, and sometimes we just, in passing, ask each other how the writing was going, how you're feeling, little pat on the back, little hug, because, well, we're Latinos and Latinos love hugging, so there was a little hugging there, which is nice. A good hug never hurts, by the way. And sometimes just venting out helps. And sometimes we just need that. And for international students, I say, use your international friends and reach out to them and help each other out. When the time comes, circle the wagons. I remember the circling the wagons brings me to an anecdote when I was finishing my doctorate. And during that stretch in the spring of 2010, there were quite a few Latinos defending. And there was all this communication through the social networks. When someone was defending, everybody would send messages of support to the others. And some people would go to each other's defenses. But the feeling that you were not alone, and in my case to know that all the Latinos were, circling when it was my time in April, everybody came the circle around me and they were supporting me, that went a long way. You need these comrades, you need these compadres to be with you. Because again, I insist, the topic of your dissertation is unique. Everything else that's happening to you is not. And it's very similar to the experience of other people around across the board. Now, let's get ready for the end of the road. And one thing I learned is that you need to find, again, need to provoke inspiration. Inspiration comes from everywhere. I have my own. It still remains my inspirational phrase to this day, and it's nothing easy. I found it in a video about the NBA, long story, but I like the phrase, nothing easy, and I turned it into my own mantra, to my own motto, to my own motivational slogan. To this day, it still remains one of my motivational phrases, nothing easy. Use music, use phrases, I came to the point that I actually printed several of these nothing easy ads, and I posted in my office, the TA office, in my little desk. I put them all over the place. I put them in my computer. I had them everywhere because that helped me keep motivated. So use music. Use anything that can fuel your fire is useful. And remember that the road to defending begins quickly. It begins early. One important suggestion, go see other defenses in your department. Go see other defenses. Talk to the candidates, talk to the professors, and go. If you can sit in a defense and just sit in and just watch the action, that can help a long way. Professors in a class and professors in a committee are very different because they have different roles. As a professor, we're supposed to be nurturing. In a committee, we're supposed to see what you're made of. So don't get yourself blindsided. Go and see defenses. See how they operate in your department, and that will get you ready. And sometimes you don't even know in which ways it can help you ready. I can tell you, I attended one defense. But one in particular saved me when it was my time, because it prepared me for everything that I faced in my own defense. Just remember, the dissertation is a big part of your life, but it's not your life. It's a big chunk of your life, but there's more there. And you need to negotiate and arrange things with your family, those close to you. And please reward them handsomely when this is over. Because you need them to be supportive. And that's why I decided to use in this particular slide a graduation picture with my wife. Because I can honestly say that too, that I'm not sure if I would have finished the way I did as successfully as I did if she hadn't been around. When she was dating, she was my girlfriend, my fiancée, and my wife. I'm not sure if I would have done it as well as I did. And organize your time. Please, your life, you are not in the dissertation channel. It's not 24 hours of dissertating all the time. It's all dissertation all the time. I agree with Shelby. Please, make room for your family. Make room for your children, your husband, your wife, and your acknowledgments. As I said, you're there because they're also making an effort. Because they're investing time and they're investing love. Pay them back in any way you can. And remember, the dissertation is a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You need to have a battle plan from day one, from the moment you enter your doctoral program. Have a battle plan for this. Also, as you approach defense, remember this secret. Unless you're ready to defend, your advisor is not going to allow you to defend. Your advisor has to okay your defense. Your advisor has to give his or her blessing. So remember, If you're there, it's because it's time for you to show the world who you are. It's time to show the world the scholar you have become. Until such time happens, your advisor will not green light it. So use that information as a source of confidence, as a shield to protect you when you go to the battle. And yes, the defense will be tough. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say, it's going to be fun, it's smooth. No, it's going to be tough. It's called a defense for a reason. But it's also a rite of passage. We want to see what you're really made of and what kind of scholar you are before we send you all into the world. This is one thing I tell all my doctoral students. You're asking for admission to a very, very nice club. We want to make sure that you belong. We want to make sure that when you go out there, you can hold your own. Because if you hold your own, then we are proud and we look good. So be prepared for that. But remember, this is your chance to shine. This is your moment. So cherish it, enjoy it. And just to end this presentation, my final word. The doctoral experience is a very thrilling ride. It's just one heck of a ride. All of you who are in the doctoral program, you have a beautiful chance, using the cliche word, to reinvent yourselves. Reinvent yourselves. Rethink your scholarship, rethink your writing, rethink your discourse. Come up with something new. Give yourself a chance to be original. That's the only chance you may have as an academic, to really have plenty of time to reinvent yourself. And also take a chance to learn and be ready to become a mentor. Because you will be mentors to the next generation of undergraduate and graduate students. They need your wisdom. Those grad students, those master students, those undergrads need your wisdom. Prepare yourself. Because once you get hooded, once you graduate, you become a mentor. Take on that mantle and live by it. Enjoy it. Savor the moments. The good ones, the hard, the bad ones, the ugly ones. Don't lose faith. Sometimes doctoral students can lose faith. But don't lose it. Keep going. Keep going at it. And please, especially my fellow international students, walk, get hooded. Do whatever you have to do. Bend yourself over backwards. Defend, walk, get hooded. You want to have your moment. This is your moment. You have been working 4, 5, 6 years for this. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. You want to have that moment when you stand in the middle of the stage and whoever you choose, your advisor, or puts the hood on you, you get up and you put on your mortarboard and you know that now I'm a doctor. And you raise your hand and do whatever you want to do there, but because this is your moment. Don't miss it. I know a lot of people, international students, who have missed on this and they regret it. They do regret it. Wear your thing and enjoy this moment, because I can assure you this from my own experience. When you are there and you get hooded and you feel that hood falling on your gown, all the pain is gone. All the worries, all the guilt, all the pain that you felt to get there is gone. And things feel, and it's better. So it does get better. So I'm just going to end it here before I get overly emotional, because I'm about to get there. And I'm going to open the floor for questions, whether in the chat or in the microphones.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Raúl. It was really inspiring and helpful. I will definitely seek help from therapy, something I never thought about before. So please, if you have any questions for Dr. Mora, would you like to type them in the chat room?
Raúl, this is Peggy. There was a really good question, and we probably have time for only one question. Your presentation was extraordinarily interesting and certainly filled with passion, so thank you for your words. The question that I think is really interesting is, how did you publish from your dissertation? And what parts of your dissertation did you find interesting enough to publish?
Well, when it comes to my dissertation, I did a number of things with it. One thing I did not do, partly because in the process of moving back, because I was in the middle of this perfect storm of relocating to Colombia, trying to arrange everything for my wife to relocate with me, and trying to find a job and everything in between. I didn't do the book. What I did was I started looking carefully at what I had and what I could use when I returned to Colombia, because there were some things, particularly the data themselves, I couldn't really use when I returned. But the first thing I did was I got several presentations or 2 or 3 articles out of that. But I think the biggest thing I did was to take the conceptual framework. Everything I did conceptualizing literacy. And I basically took that, kind of put it in a bag, put it in a briefcase, and I took it with me. And that later became what I'm using now in the Literacy in Second Languages project. All the research we're doing on literacy right now in my university, and the literacy component for the master's program, and the course I teach on literacy in second languages. That is all the conceptual framework I devised in my dissertation. I have used the methodology chapter as a way for me to mentor my students and guide them in the process of developing their own methodology chapters. So basically, the point here is that you can use your dissertation in whichever way you feel might work best. If you stay in the United States, it's probably, some people might find it easier to going to the chat, to the book/article format. People who return to their home countries might want to be a little more strategic and start picking specific sections of your dissertation that you can use to propel a professional agenda. Particular case, I repeat, I took the whole thing on literacy, and since that's a field that in Latin America is very much uncharted territory, especially all the work on alternative literacies, I knew that I could use that very quickly and use it to make an impact in research in my academic community. So, but it's just that there are different ways. The point is, use your dissertation as the starting point of your career. And at some point, don't feel bad if you have to let it go because they expect you to move on. So use it as a building foundation for something valid and powerful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Raúl. That was great. I think, Rashida, we just probably need to close this session. We're getting close to the top of the hour. So thank you again, Raúl.
Pleasure was all mine.